Story 1. Each act, each occasion, is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join with you in resisting somehow. You do not want to act or even talk alone. You do not want to go out of your way to make trouble. Why not? Well, you are not in the habit of doing it. And it is not just fear of standing alone, that restrains you. It is also genuine uncertainty. Uncertainty is a very important factor, and instead of decreasing as time goes on, it grows. Outside, in the streets, in the general community, everyone is happy. One hears no protest and certainly sees none. In France or Italy, there would be slogans against the government painted on walls and fences. In Germany, outside the great cities, perhaps there is not even this. In the university community, in your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom certainly feel as you do. But what do they say? They say, "It is not so bad," or "You are seeing things," or "You are an alarmist." And you are an alarmist. You are saying that this must lead to that, and you cannot prove it. These are the beginnings, yes. But how do you know for sure when you do not know the end? And how do you know, or even surmise, the end? On the one hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, the political party, intimidate you. On the other, your colleagues dismiss you as pessimistic or even neurotic. You are left with your close friends, who are, naturally, people who have always thought as you have. They thought they were free. The Germans, 1933 to 1945 by Milton Mayer. Viewing fascism through the lens of a final straw or a last line in the sand is generally a doomed strategy, because by the time it gets to that line, people have already slowly been divided into one of two camps. Those who are never okay with what fascism brings, and those who are either supportive or tacitly tolerant of what it brings. And all fascism needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing while they shore up their numbers. Once they have a critical threshold of support, it is still possible to stop them, but only through increasingly extreme measures. We just tried jailing 1,200 supporters of the Make America Great Again movement for being insurrectionists, and it did not work to discourage fascism. So that should give you an idea of where we are at on the gauge of extreme measures needed to stop them. Story 2. January 6th crossed that line. By rights, Donald Trump should be in prison right now, and every Republican who enabled him to plan an attempted coup should have been removed from office and criminally charged by January 7th. Story 3. I think the announcement of a third term would be it for me. Right now, the thing preventing total authoritarianism is term limits. Donald Trump can do what he likes, but in 2028 he is not going to be president anymore. A third term announcement would be the red line for me. But that is me thinking we have gone too far and we cannot rely on any existing systems to get us out of this mess. That is when it is too late, the hypothetical crossing of the Rubicon, where America will officially be an authoritarian state and no longer resemble a democracy. Story 4. The question is, where is the line with Donald Trump supporters? If being accused of sex trafficking a minor is the only line they have, then humanity is in serious trouble. Story 5. I think you missed it by about 4 years. January 6th seems to have woken half the population up. Shame it is the wrong half. Story 6. The biggest problem is that the authoritarians who have been in charge for a long time know how to keep us fat and relatively happy. It does not matter which team you play for. It is all the same game. Nothing will ever change if we cannot break out of that mindset. The direction we are heading as a country is not healthy for anyone. If any kind of violence breaks out, it will not be the powerful who suffer. It will be the poor, the middle class, and even the people who believe they are part of the upper class. We will all be in the same boat while the politicians and billionaires who started it stand back, watch, and wait for the smoke to clear. When it is over, they will step back in and tell us who was right, who was wrong, who gets punished, and who gets rewarded. Then they will say it is time to rebuild and make the country strong again. But they will never pay the price for the chaos they caused. The laws are written by them to protect them and to keep them on top. This is not a game for us. It is us versus them. The only problem is that most of us still do not know which team we are really on. There is not a single politician or billionaire who cares about you or your family. All they care about is keeping you distracted long enough to stop you from realizing that we are all still slaves. fighting in the Colosseum for their amusement. Story 7. The United States government is run by sex offenders blackmailed by the Israeli intelligence agency. It has already gone too far and has zero legitimacy in my eyes. It does have a lot of force and resources, though a horrifying amount, to be controlled by such unforgivable people. Story 8. What do you mean by what if and what will? You are talking about past and present tense occurrences as if they have yet to happen. Academics, historians, and survivors of authoritarian regimes, especially Holocaust survivors, have been sounding the alarm since 2016. Not only has the line been crossed, but it was then voted in on the promise of it. Story 9. Here is something you can do today. Start carrying a black umbrella, open to be most effective, especially if there is no rain. This signals that you feel the way you do. It also signals that it is acceptable to feel that way and that more people feel that way than you realize. Simply put, you carry it because you will carry it until the Epstein files are released. That is all. Imagine a street full of hundreds of these, with Americans going about their daily business. Nobody can arrest you for carrying an umbrella. The reason Epstein is a weak point is that it is the only thing so far that gets under Donald Trump's skin. The more you push him on it, the crazier he sounds. The journalist, the convictions, the grab them, none of those got under his skin like this. A weakness has been uncovered. Keep poking, keep pushing. The Republican Party will force him out, probably in a manner similar to President Richard Nixon, if this gets bigger. It is not that they love or trust him, but that they do not have a clear alternative. If it looks like there is more gain with him gone than with him staying, he will go, probably via the 25th Amendment. Story 10. It is bold of you to assume my limit has not already been crossed and that all I am doing is complaining about it online. Story 11. It has gone too far, and no, I am not publicly posting what actions I am taking. If the line has not been crossed for you yet, you need to brush up on your history and civics lessons. Story 12. When? If? Dude, it has already happened. Authoritarianism is here to stay. Do you really think there will be elections in 2026, other than rigged ones? Kamala Harris said the system is broken. What makes you believe it is not? Story 13. Nobody who lives in the United States should share any information about their plans in this thread beyond organized locally and in secret. Story 14. That line has been crossed already. It is time to send 20 French citizens to every town and city across the United States so they can teach you all how to go on strike. Story 15. Apparently, my line was citizens getting deported by mistake. I got really fired up and tried to get the people I know to go to rallies but was mostly ignored. Then I looked into how I could go into politics and realized I would end up divorced and alone, so I basically started playing magic to deal with the stress. Story 16. We have already crossed that line for me. I am just waiting for enough people to wake up because right now there is nothing we can do since there are still enough people who would actually stand up for the government and make it impossible to effect change. Story 17. As a highly politicized French person living in America, this is a nightmare. We would have been protesting and striking since day one, and things would not have been allowed to go this far in the first place. Riot already. Story 18. It has been reported for a long time. The Central Intelligence Agency is confirmed to have been selling crack on the streets of Los Angeles in the 1980s. They also had plans to cause intentional crop failure in Cuba to spark a revolution. Story 19. Putting people in a concentration camp was one. Sending innocent people to die in a torture prison was another. Burying the Epstein reports was another. Cutting off funds for early education is unforgivable. Pressuring colleges into bribes and crypto scams, cramming federal judge seats with unfit judges, ignoring major security breaches. I could do this all day. Story 20. We are there. Getting passports ready. As a baby boomer having lived in post-war Germany, it is done. We are past the tipping point. Many will wait until it affects someone close to them. But we are riding the handcart to hell. Story 21. That line is gone. I'm surprised by everyone's passivity, and I'll be blunt. Social media definitely isn't helping. Other than that, I am not saying a word. Story 22. We're past the line. I think the point of no return is when everyone has to stand up and get involved if there is a refusal to step down at the end of the term. If the elected leader of a nation says, well, I'm just going to stay in charge forever, that is fascism. That is when rebellion becomes duty. Story 23. When they started sending people to death camps without a fair trial, it was no longer a wannabe dictatorship. It is a dictatorship. Story 24. The line was crossed with internment camps, probably before. But that is the issue with lines in the sand. They disappear with a gust of wind. Story 25. I have said for a few years now that the moment they start limiting women's access to their money or credit without a man, I am out. I will run to the border and seek refugee status in Canada. I will try to get to Finland if I can manage it. Right now, I am unsure if that is a top priority, but for a while, it seemed like a realistic outcome. It may still happen at some point if we continue down this path. Story 26. The American people have shown that there are no boundaries. Their country was taken from them openly, and they did nothing. Story 27. Didn't the United Kingdom recently ban online discussions that the government disagrees with, on top of arresting people for their speech and even their own thoughts? It is very simple to find countless examples of massive overreach and control in most first-world countries, including the United States. It is ironic to see people point out authoritarianism elsewhere while ignoring it in their own backyards. COVID-19 was the perfect test for governments to see how far they could push for control. It turns out they can go pretty far. Story 28. That line has been crossed by the current government in America more than once. And I do not know. As the line from the movie goes, we all like to believe we would run into the burning building, but until we feel that heat, we can never know. My plan is to resist as much as possible without the need for violence. Story 29. The only thing that will move the meter without using violence is a full-spectrum general strike. Story 30. Lying to revolutionary soldiers about being free, only to hire mercenaries to kill them when they actually tried to live free, causes a loss of faith. Story 31. Discretion requires that I remain silent on both of these questions, and I suggest others do the same. However, I encourage everyone to answer these questions for themselves quietly and discreetly. Story 32. When they start sending secret police on the streets to kidnap people who are homeless or look different, oh wait, that is already happening. Story 33. That's the trap. Looking for a magical red line that denotes we have fallen into fascism. It is something that happens bit by bit, day by day. One Supreme Court ruling followed by another, one norm broken leading to the next. There is no red line. We are not magically a democracy and then one day not. Story 34. The United States has already crossed my lines, but I do not live there. All I am going to do is complain to Americans on the internet because there is not really anything else I can do. Story 35. Giving the president criminal immunity when there is no reference to this in the Constitution. Oh, already crossed? Story 36. We are there. Opposing parties under investigation, the judiciary being ignored or making blatantly biased rulings with zero legal basis, people being disappeared on the street by unidentified law enforcement in unmarked vans, literal concentration camps, private and public institutions being brought under control. There really are not many unchecked boxes left. As for what to do, I am at the prepare, stock up, and pray level. I live in a blue state and hope that buys me some safety or at least time. I am trying to convince my children to attend college overseas and converting my basement and garage into extra bedrooms for my friends looking to leave red states. Story 37. Ignoring all lines already crossed? Either ordering peaceful protesters to be shot by federal or state police, or rigging, ignoring, or discarding the results of the 2026 midterm elections. If the Democratic Party wins back one or both houses but the results are discarded or ignored, then it is time for mass protests every single day until they concede. So far, the government has done many authoritarian things, and we have come close to the line with election issues, but there has not yet been a clear case of one side definitely winning an election while the other side takes or keeps power anyway. We at least have the appearance that all of this could be resolved with the next election. If that is broken, then we stop working on turning out the vote and switch to organizing mass protests and strike action. Story 38. It's already happened in my opinion, and there is not a whole lot I am able or willing to do about it. However, I have long suspected that some form of revolution is coming if people can somehow mobilize en masse, which seems challenging in modern society. Story 39. Working towards professional licensing overseas. It is a long process to get education and experience evaluated. Story 40. The United States went too far in authoritarianism the last time Donald Trump was in office. That line was at least crossed when Donald Trump started removing inspectors general across the government, if not before. However, there is not much I can do about it when people such as yourself do not already see that. Story 41. We have crossed the line. Military forces are deployed on the streets. The courts are ignored. Due process is ignored. The press and media are being attacked. There have been literal political assassinations that disappeared from the news within days. We have crossed the line. Story 42. I thought that the government using concentration camps was that line. But apparently all you Americans are okay with that. Nobody is doing anything to fight back. Big, brave, gun-toting tough guy cowboy Americans are, in reality, cowardly. You have no resistance movement. Your grandfathers who fought in World War II would be very disappointed in you. Story 43. No one will do anything. Since being elected, there have been a billion things the former president has done that have justified some level of response, but there is nothing of substance. Story 44. There is no last straw. We read about Nazi history and other democracies that turned into dictatorships, and we know they were dictatorships in hindsight after a lot of consensus building. At the time, people felt it was murky. Germans probably still thought they were free democracies, except if they held votes, Hitler would win anyway, and they probably would be right, so why waste money? There is no last straw. It is always the boiling frog. Story 45. Americans will do nothing until well past the point when they should have taken action regarding their firearms. They will be too exhausted by their daily jobs to protest and too in debt to miss work. Based on the last few years, America will remain passive, hoping someone else will act on their behalf. Story 46. The only thing I will say is that I am not capable of organizing any resistance. That is up to someone else, but I would fight. Story 47. We crossed that line in the early 2000s when we made up lies about weapons of mass destruction to start a war, meanwhile demonizing all Muslims. Story 48. That line was already crossed, probably lapped the planet, and is gearing up for another attempt. Story 49. I was just watching the news with my roommate and asked her, why are people still calling this a wannabe dictatorship? Active government targets include the media, all levels of education including private universities, government employees past and present. The United States, as I knew it growing up, is already gone. Precedent has been set for future administrations. I'm not sure it can be rolled back. Someone show me a government that has come back from authoritarianism without scrapping everything and starting over, because I am out of hope. As for what I am going to do about it, I do not know. I have mouths to feed. I feel fatalistic about the government. I am just trying to take care of my people at this point. Story 50. Well, they already randomly abduct citizens of my ethnicity. I'm wondering if I should just leave before it gets worse. And what is the practical reason to abduct citizens anyway? Is it forced conscription like the Russian Federation? Story 51. When they announced the con artist, rapist, pedophile, and leader of the January 6th insurrection as the president-elect for a second term. Story 52. January 6th was the red line. It was the red line for the country. A political party tried to overthrow the government. It failed, yet none of the orchestrators behind that attempt were held accountable. Not by the party, not by those who got elected into power, and not by the courts. Now, the Supreme Court has effectively removed the part of the Constitution that was supposed to prevent that kind of thing from happening. The Democrats did nothing to crack down on what happened. The Republicans got reelected, and now we have authoritarian thugs with an unlimited budget and concentration camps. This is where we are. It has been 6 months. They are already sabotaging the election for 2026. They are dismantling the First Amendment and other parts of the Constitution. By all accounts, we are already in a downward spiral. Story 53. When Donald Trump won the election in 2024, Everything collapsed around me. The minute the election was called for him, I began grieving the loss of our country. Story 54. They already have. I am just not traveling there right now. Oh, and I have also changed my English from American English to British English. Story 55. The morning after the first Donald Trump election, my wife and I were in so much despair we could not get out of bed. We received a call from a dear friend in Europe who had been trying to sell a house in her country, but it had been sitting empty for a while. She offered to rent it to us. It is a very LGBT-friendly country, so we knew we would be in a welcoming place. We immediately started to work on visas and moving plans. We rented our house to a family member, packed 3 suitcases and our dog, and left the country. We are quite happy with our decision and hope we will be able to become citizens here soon. I was extremely politically active and engaged all my life, but now I am just done, and I want to enjoy my retirement in peace. Story 56. The Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act of 2001. That was my red line. Story 57. When peaceful protest is criminalized, journalists are jailed for reporting the truth, and elections no longer reflect the will of the people. That is my red line. Story 58. Guess what? In my humble opinion, it already started in 2001/2002 with the establishment of the Patriot Act that undermined fundamental democratic principles and rights. Those opposing were called traitors, but the lack of resistance back then enabled everything that happened afterwards in the name of patriotism. Story 59. The wildest thing is that child exploitation elites being effectively confirmed is not enough to even trigger a general strike. You really do not have a grasp on how revolution works. It has not happened for 250 years. Story 60. We crossed it when we locked up the industrial workers of the world and the Socialist Party of America for opposing the national government. We crossed it when Martin Luther King Jr. got a bullet from the Federal Bureau of Investigation in his skull. We crossed it when national security attacked and slaughtered innocents in the name of anti-communism. We crossed it when we stripped the people's right to arms because some of the wrong people tried to protect themselves. Story 61. I am still reflecting on the Pilgrim's story. Who do people from Europe think they are? To this day, we continue to oppress the indigenous people. As far as I am concerned, taking the land from them and everything that followed was and is way too far. Story 62. It is clearly the direction. There is no need for a red line. It is a red point cloud, and it is getting denser with each passing day of news. There are buffers and green shoots at the same time, but to me, these are far outnumbered and drowned out by bad news, especially stories about our crumbling institutions and the consolidation of power happening as I speak. Prepare for it in whatever way you need to. Stop delaying preparation because you want to ask one more question, read the news for 2 more months, or wait until the midterms. We are in it. There is already evidence of what you are looking for, whatever your definition of a red line is. Get ready in the way that makes sense to you, and if you are not sure, research what you might do and start doing that. Get your documents ready if you think leaving makes sense, for example. Do not wait. Story 63. If the government starts shutting down independent media and jailing peaceful protesters, that is my red line. If that happens, I will protest, document everything, and help others stay informed. With how censorship bills are appearing now, we are already close. Story 64. If I am honest, my boundaries have already been crossed. I just cannot do anything about it as an individual, and that is how most of us feel. Story 65. As a Canadian who used to spend 6 months a year in the United States, I am no longer doing that. Instead of buying a holiday home in Arizona, we bought one in Baja California, Mexico. We will be spending our money there from now on. The issues arose with the tariffs, inaccurate accusations about the border and security, the interview with President Volodymyr Zelensky, the lack of professionalism, his hatred of his own citizens, and how he is attacking not just Canada but Mexico, China, and many other countries. Even after his 4 years, I am done with the United States. Too conservative, too hateful, too much of a bully. Story 66. The line has been crossed. The government, at all levels, no longer cares about people or doing what is best or even helpful. We are doomed. Story 67. He has already crossed the line by directly violating the United States Constitution. There have been numerous other serious lines he and his party have crossed, but violating the most basic and sacred laws of the nation is significant. If you're Rubicon, your step too far is something like imprisoning political opponents, disappearing dissidents, or murdering thousands of people in an attempt at ethnic cleansing, then that is far too late and you have already completely relinquished your democracy, justice, and freedom. Story 68. It has already been decided for me with the two-party system. Since I am currently unemployed and do not know anyone closer than an hour's drive, I cannot do anything. Story 69. The line was crossed years ago. What do you expect me to do? I vote, I protest, I write my elected officials, and I encourage everyone I know to do the same. The next step is doing illegal or dangerous things. Story 70. They crossed it a while ago. It is not my place to do anything since I do not live there. I will never enter that country again. Story 71. We crossed it, and the answer is quietly hope and simultaneously dread, being the last person alive in my home when climate change becomes severe. Story 72. If that line is crossed. Devon, that line has been crossed, recrossed, and crossed again numerous times in the past 6 months. Story 73. These are the questions I have been asking people who call Donald Trump a fascist. Let's assume he is. Is a fascist takeover of the government an existential crisis? If it is, do existential crises need immediate resolution, or can we wait it out? If we can wait it out, is it truly existential? If he is a fascist and it is an existential crisis that needs immediate resolution, what is the resolution? Most just say to wait it out, and if that is the solution, then either we do not care about fascism as much as we think we do, or the government has not been taken over by fascism. Story 74. We have arrived at a critical point. Opposing parties are under investigation, the judiciary is being ignored or issuing blatantly biased rulings with no legal basis, people are disappearing from the streets by unidentified law enforcement in unmarked vans, literal concentration camps, not death camps, are being built, and private and public institutions are being controlled. There are very few unchecked issues left. As for what to do, I am at the point of preparing carefully, stocking up and hoping for the best. I live in a blue state and hope that gives me some safety or at least time. I am trying to convince my children to attend college overseas and converting my basement and garage into additional bedrooms for friends looking to leave red states. Story 75. Authoritarianism is well in place. Every day will be a barrage. Norms are shattered, and thus nothing is a step too far. The noose will tighten, but the gallows are made, the rope is around our necks. It's just not suffocatingly tight yet, and the floor hasn't dropped out, but it is there. Refer to the extensive list of actions taken to date. Any one of them would have been political suicide a decade ago. The fact that the gifted Air Force One jet from Saudi Arabia is Trump's to personally keep and take home when he leaves office is an unprecedented emoluments clause violation and utter nonsense in itself. Yet, the fact that Trump is using $1 billion of taxpayer money to retrofit the plane's interior into a palace in the sky was just overlooked. $1 billion of personal enrichment. Cutting social service programs that will result in real deaths of American citizens, but spending $1 billion to gold trim the interior of a plane. People remain indifferent. We are in serious trouble. It will be astounding to see all the genuinely shocked faces and ignorant individuals emerge when the situation becomes too real in their wallets and homes and they finally voice their concerns. Story 76. Ignoring everything that has already happened, January 6th was bad. It would be Donald Trump officially announcing he is running for a third term and nobody trying to do anything. The only thing stopping the United States from outright becoming an authoritarian state is term limits. Right now, yes, Donald Trump is in office and can do what he wants, but in 2028 he is done and there will be someone new. If he ignores that, goes ahead and tries to forcibly stay, then the line has been crossed for me utterly and there is no possibility of reconciliation. Now, what do I do in that situation? If it were the days before the United States had the modern and current military it possesses now, I would probably join a revolt. Since realistically any revolt is going to be crushed, I would focus on trying to get out and move somewhere outside the United States that is similar and speaks English. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Ireland, or the United Kingdom. Story 77. If they put United States Marines in the streets against the United States population, I will quit my job and protest full-time. Oh, they did that? Well, next time I will do it for sure. Story 78. There is no red line. Supporters love him no matter what he does. We all know he is a rapist and a con man, more than likely a pedophile too. They do not care. They are so full of hatred for anyone who is not old, white, and Christian. These are the worst of America. But they voted, and now we have this clown show. Most people are too busy watching their children play soccer to worry about their rights unless it is their gun rights. Then it is all out, but First Amendment rights? Who cares? As long as they can shoot each other, it is fine. Story 79. We are several months into immigration and customs enforcement agents kidnapping immigrants and citizens off the street, and our government putting people in squalid cages or shipping them off to foreign torture prisons in countries they are not from or to a country in the midst of civil war on a different continent. All with a huge disregard for the very idea of due process. They just received over $100 billion to expand that practice, as well as misappropriated Federal Emergency Management Agency funds to build more camps. January 6th was the last straw. This is more like a giant boulder on the camel whose back is already broken. I do not know what to do. I am scared. I am living day to day, trying to provide for a loved one with mental illness, take care of a father with dementia, keep my lights on, make sure my house has functional plumbing, and try to keep together some extended family. I was feeling pretty stretched beyond my limits before this was all going down. I am not sure what I can do, but I know that things are very, very desperately bad and going downhill fast. And it is only just enough that most of us can still pretend things are normal and fine. Story 80. The insane levels of funding and complete impunity for immigration and customs enforcement crossed that line. Sending people to concentration camps in a country they are not even from, such as El Salvador, with no accountability, recourse, or due process crossed that line. The few people we have heard from who managed to get out tell horrifying stories of being beaten, raped, and starved. Alligator Alcatraz crossed that line. The line has already been crossed. Story 81. It has already been crossed. I wish I could do more, but I am a person with limited mobility who is partially housebound. I take care of my neighbors as best as I can and share radical political ideas in hopes of helping people realize what needs to be done. Story 82. To be honest, aside from exaggeration and social grandstanding, I have noticed no change in my life since Donald Trump took office. I am not a fan of Donald Trump by any means, and neither did I support Joe Biden or any other prominent corporate candidate. My advice: stop reading the news and just turn off the television. At first, you will feel a void, but eventually, you will realize that 99% of reporting is fear-mongering to get views. Just tune it out. Donald Trump has passed nothing materially or legally substantial to change your life for better or worse. This is a very unpopular opinion on Reddit, and I will probably get downvoted heavily, but if there is at least one person who reads this and it helps change their perspective, then I have done my job. Direct message me if you want to talk politics. I am open to other perspectives. Story 83. I wish this country would break apart into separate states already. There is nothing I can do from California that would make any difference. Protests are ignored, and violence or disruption is treated as criminal and used as an excuse to escalate. With police and military action, we are held hostage by an idiocracy in conservative states taking advantage of an outdated electoral system to override the ability of reasonable Americans to elect someone who is not completely corrupt, ignorant, or insane. Story 84. That line was crossed months ago, but it does not matter. The Transportation and Commodity Approval Committee's approval rate is below 40%, but 65% of Americans would not vote for Harris. Maybe the other party can figure out that my old Eastern European neighbors are not going to vote for a woman. Maybe somebody born in the 1980s next time. Story 85. It is scary because any protest or intense situation could result in people being shot in the streets. At that point, people will wake up, and I hope it will not be too late. Mario's Brothers' important matters are happening at the end of the year, so people will be upset. It is a waiting game, and it will boil over at some point. Story 86. Roe versus Wade overturn was my marker. I believe a person should have the right to their own body. The government does not force people to donate organs or blood against their will, even though it could save several lives. Usually, Blood donation is minimally invasive and generally safe. Forcing a person to carry a pregnancy for months with all of its symptoms and endure the medical trauma of birth or cesarean section is extremely invasive, often causes permanent damage such as bladder issues, scarring, and tearing, and is much more dangerous. I do believe abortion is ending the life of a baby, but we should not force someone to lose the right to their own body. I think the right to oneself is innate and should not be violated. We emigrated. Story 87. My limit was crossed years ago, but what am I going to do about it? I am just going to sit here, be annoyed, and watch the person burn. Story 88. Better stop him now before he forms his huge ice force that will definitely be used against citizens who are not compliant. Seriously. Story 89. It has already been decided with the re-election of Donald Trump. The likelihood of our national collapse is unquestionably high. I am waiting to see what happens while secretly hoping I am wrong. Story 90. The line has been crossed since 1979, when Ronald Reagan decided that winning an election was so important he made prisoners stay imprisoned for a few extra months to ensure his victory. Then he was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. No one ever attempted to hold him accountable. Bill Clinton represented a significant shift to the right in the Overton window because no one was outraged by Reagan's many crimes. Every economic graph shows that this is the point where the economy stopped working for everyone. Story 91. To me, a Dutch person living in the Netherlands, that line was crossed when Donald Trump incited a crowd to stop the certification of votes, and he was not immediately arrested. As I live on a different continent, there is not much I can do, except that I have moved away from buying or using any United States products both in my private and professional life as a business owner. The taxes I would pay on those products would have been used to make people's lives miserable. Even though many have literally asked for it by voting for fascism, racism, and corruption, there are just too many United States Americans who did not ask for this. I was also planning to visit the United States in the coming 2 years because I would love to explore your nature, but that has been put on hold, perhaps forever. Good luck over there. Read books like 1984 and see how much has already become reality in your country, and may it help you rediscover democracy. Story 92. No one will take action because by that point martial law will be enacted. The government has raised generations of obedient people. Story 93. If I had a boundary, then I would say it was crossed a long time ago before I was even born. There is nothing to do and nowhere to go. I just have to kill time before I am dead. Story 94. If people are planning anything besides protest, advocacy, civil disobedience, or emigration, they will not be announcing it on Reddit. Your informal poll to measure the spirit of the times will have biased results. Story 95. Everyone in government is too afraid to speak out against him because of his manic revenge. Maybe if each senator and every congressperson were inundated with calls, emails, and letters of protest, it might bolster their bravery. They could look to Newscom, Senator Sanders, Department of Justice, and Crockett for lessons in having a spine. Story 96. I think for many we have been well beyond that point, but nobody is willing to do anything. I think we will have to sit through all 4 brutal years, then maybe we can rebuild because God forbid if we break the status quo. Story 97. If someone breaks into my door, they will quickly learn about the Constitution with multiple repetitions to their face. Story 98. I left the United States long ago. The government has already gone too far, and if I were in the United States, I would not do anything. I was chatting with a friend about how the old ways of fighting will not work. The government has the military, militarized police departments, immigration and customs enforcement, a massive surveillance apparatus and artificial intelligence at its disposal to create whatever narrative it wants, or at least sow seeds of doubt among the populace. It is not like I am going to try to make all of their cryptocurrency disappear, reset the digital infrastructure to send the markets to zero, infiltrate the regime as a chaos agent to drain the swamp from within, or participate in some dark web chat group organizing something like an October Revolution. So, like most people, even though I am not in the United States, I will just try to weather the storm, stay under the radar, and extract as much joy as I can before the government that currently allows me to reside here decides to cooperate with the Trump administration on immigration and I am sent to Sudan, El Salvador, or elsewhere. Story 99. When they enact child protection laws like the United Kingdom does to force people to only access the internet if they identify themselves to a third party who will not mishandle their personal information. Seriously, it is like the entire Western world sees North Korea and China as models to follow. Story 100. Once I am targeted and penalized as a dissenter, I will show them what dissent means. I have been refining this resolve for nearly 10 years now. Story 101. Once free speech starts to get censored as it is in the United Kingdom, that is my reason for believing that America has become authoritarian. Story 102. I am not a United States citizen, but it would be either when he tries to get a third term or when persecution of the opposition starts. Story 103. I would look the other way if education were funded, our infrastructure were invested in, and big technology and pharmaceutical companies were put in their place. Until then, have you heard of these Epstein files? Story 104. They have already gone too far. I joined the New York Exit Group, created by a man from Queens after the 2024 election. He is no longer with the New York Exit Group, but I am trying to free myself and my community from America, dictators, and fascism. If you live in a different democratic state, please join the Republic of New England Group or the Cascadia Group. We may or may not win in the end, but we miss 100% of the shots we do not take. Story 105. A red line implies that, if crossed, Americans would take action to stop this madness. If the last 6 years, and especially the last 6 months, have taught me anything, it is that Americans are mostly cowards. Nothing will rouse them as long as they have YouTube and Doritos, bread and circuses. There are no red lines. Story 106. The red line was crossed when many people chose not to vote or voted for a woman. We all knew what was coming. Story 107. COVID-19 was my red line. I was in New York, and when my state government left the United States Navy hospital ship Comfort mostly empty and placed COVID-19 patients into nursing homes, I was done. Story 108. Pick any event from the past 6 months. We are working through our list of requirements to move to France in less than a year. Story 109. I think you would be surprised how many people do not actually have a red line. Many people may have an answer to that question, but without conviction, it does not really mean much. It is not something that should be decided in the moment. That is a decision that should be taken very seriously and require a lot of internal reflection. If someone is not serious about what their red line is, then they can more easily be convinced to move it when things get serious. Story 110. It has already happened in this administration, and I am doing what one individual in over 340 million individuals can do. I am not doing everything I can, and I should do more, such as joining movements that align with my ideals, but I am trying. Story 111. When authorities begin sending death row inmates to collect guns door to door, you know the situation is serious. Story 112. Canadian here. The news story about the soccer player being sent to El Salvador over a tattoo is what made me cancel all of my vacation plans that involved the United States. Elbows up. Story 113. They passed that law before I even reached adulthood. I have just been waiting for others to catch up, with no interest in slowing them down. Story 114. What would George Washington say? I have about 20 Revolutionary War ancestors and numerous others in every war thereafter. My family has done enough, so I might leave for a better cost of living, happiness, and healthcare index. Story 115. Forced vaccines and forced masking were when I realized it was time to prepare. I knew it was getting close, but I had no idea they would start that soon and make it worse. Half the United States actually bought into that misinformation, and that half became a megaphone for propaganda doing the work for them. Eventually, our biggest threat will be each other. Prepare. Story 116. The problem was Citizens United, and I will continue to express my frustration online and vote. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.